What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to How's It Going to End? How you doing? That's great. Today, I am joined by Matthew Chuang, cinematographer for Goran Stolevski's feature film directorial debut, You Won't Be Alone, which is still in theaters. Please go see it. How you doing? How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. You're good. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate you watching the film
Oh,
multiple times, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I saw it twice so far. I had to jot down some notes when I knew that I was gonna talk with you. So
Oh,
I'm
nice.
I'm very excited. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
No, man. Thanks for having me on.
Um, I'm particularly excited to have you on because I think that it's such a unique experience to get to talk with a DP, which I think that is a part of the filmmaking process that most people who are just not as interested in all of this maybe misinterpret. So I would love to know what was your experience? What did your experience entail in working on You Won't Be Alone?
Um, I guess when the script first came to me for You Won't Be Alone, um, I kind of started reading it and I was like, oh man, this script is kind of crazy. Like I've never read anything like it. I've never really seen anything like it. I've never seen human behavior in a way that's kind of like written, especially in the first, well, throughout the whole entire film. But having someone grow up in a cave and not be able to talk and not, who's never kind of been in a community. Um, so in my mind, I was like, oh, how the hell do we shoot this? Like I've never seen this kind of behavior before, so it's all kind of new. And then the first meeting with Goran, the director, we discussed that and we discussed, how crazy the ideas were within this script. And, for an audience to kind of buy into it and believe in it and be engaged in it, we're just talking like, yeah, for it's all kind of dependent on the actors. If the audience believes in the actors and their performance, and if they feel like they're immersed in this world, then I feel like they'll buy into it and kind of let go and be a part of it. So through that discussion, knowing that Goran in his previous films liked to be quite loose with the camera and kind of had more of a handheld approach. Once again, that kind of goes down to, you can see Goran straight away as a director is focused on his actors and the performance and making them feel real. So then it's just like, all right, how do we take that next step with You Won't Be Alone? And with this particular film, we shot in a way that I've never really shot before, in the sense that we kind of just let the actors move around the space and kind of go with whatever they're feeling at the time. Obviously, Goran knows what he needs for the beats within that scene, but the actors were really allowed to go anywhere. And we normally, in a standard production, so you might rehearse or you might start lighting for, body doubles and having marks for the actors and marks for camera and marks for focus and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit more kind of designed and planned. But for this, we wanted to embrace the unknown and to have the actors kind of discover the moments and kind of have the camera also in that kind of vein where everything feels unscripted and spontaneous and alive. So it's a certain way of filmmaking that, we definitely explored a lot. And, we weren't even really planning on doing it for the whole film, except we just started doing it and it was actually working really great. And yeah, then we just started doing it more and more because, the actors really, the actors really loved it. And, the more times we're doing it, the more things we can anticipate with the crew, with my camera crew and the sound crew. And, we just started, yeah, we can see why, like, we can see and feel why it's working for this film. And we just started
Absolutely.
to build on it more.
Absolutely. I think this film has such a distinct, it's so visually distinct because you have these, I've actually been choosing to call them handicaps. You have a protagonist that can't speak, and
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
been deprived of of a life until I think it's until 16. So I think that you uh, masterfully captured this curiosity in her about the rest of the world. Um, and you brought that across in a way that, you know, she can't communicate with everyone, so she communicates through her actions and through
Mhm.
her thoughts. And I love that like paradox side of, we get to hear her narration, we get to hear her
Mhm.
voice, but we
Mhm.
never see it really spoken out. And I think that's
Mhm.
a really cool dual side to that. And on top of that visual distinction, you are in this beautiful setting of mountains and plains.
Mhm.
And where did you guys shoot?
So it was place called it was the city of Pirot, which is like 3 hours from Belgrade in Serbia.
Hmm.
And from Pirot, it was like another 30, 40 minutes by drive. The name of the town was, I can't pronounce it properly, but starts with a P. But it's a small village that's kind of still fairly, the structures are kind of fairly intact of what you've seen, except Bethany Ryan, the producer, built a lot of stuff on top of that to
Yeah.
make it more period, and I added a few more massive kind of like structures with balconies and stairs and stuff like that. But the layout was on a mountainside,
Yeah.
so quite a lot of that village is in the one kind of place. And you know, Bethany Ryan and her team had to make a lot of it believable because, like I said, the camera will move where the actors were moving.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, and then that also was a you know, I always said to Beth, is like the performance of the actors was really helped by the production design because it's so detailed and it feels very real that they were just responding to what was there, and obviously the other people within the scene and animals in the scene.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there was a lot for them to respond and react to.
Yeah. I mean, there are several moments where I'm like, you see Navina come across, you know, plants, and she's so
Yeah,
amazed, and she lets
yeah,
the water drip on her, and
yeah, yeah.
it's incredibly innocent and beautiful to see,
Mm-hmm,
you know, essentially she calls herself, you know, the witch, the devil, and all that stuff.
mm-hmm,
And she's experiencing these such, like, you know, I think honestly, I mean, the period has this all built in, but stuff that most people never even think about, maybe when, like, when
mm-hmm.
they go outside and they think about what they appreciate in life. And
Yeah.
it's all played through such like unique framing. I love that. One of my favorite aspects of it all is she's always on the fringe of the frame, and
Mm-hmm,
the rest
mm-hmm,
of like 95 to 90% of the rest of the frame is the world around her. And
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
you take everything in with her,
mm-hmm.
and it plays towards her innocent curiosity. What was the thought process behind trying to do that? Because you do have a lot of it handheld and a lot of it very whimsical and go with the flow, and it comes across very fulfilling in a way.
No, you're right. I mean, that was something that we were doing during pre-production. You know, it was like 5 or 6 weeks pre-production officially, but then Goran, myself, Bethany, the production designer, and Christina Seaton, the producer, we were there maybe 3 weeks before that, just the four of us, and Stefan, our location manager, scout. And then during that time, it was just the four of us kind of just walking around his village and going into the spaces and looking at, you know, obviously what's there, what the lighting's doing. And I had like a camera with me, like a red Komodo camera, which kind of fits in like a backpack. And I would, for myself, I was kind of like just checking the lighting and seeing how, you know, so, yeah, just kind of shooting the space. And then we started shooting some people, and then Goran would come over and then we would start working. You know, he was like, "Hey, I got this kind of idea. I haven't really done it before, but let's, you know, let's see how it looks and how it feels." Is like, because we were shooting on like a 1:4:4, which is more of a square
Yeah,
ratio.
yeah,
You know, he was like, "Well, what if we try like a lot of headroom? Or like, what if we try like putting the uh like cutting the actor off on the edge of frame?" And you know, we're just trying these ideas. And then Sarah, uh Klimovska, one of the actors, like one of the
Yeah.
leads, like I guess our first Nevena,
Yeah.
you know, she came quite early in the process as well, and she would come out with us to look at the spaces. And between her and Goran, they might try a few different ideas for movement and performance, and then I will kind of shoot simultaneously. And then, you know, we might once again we'll try like these ideas when it came to composition. You know, at the time I was like, oh, this is pretty bold, like to have them
Yeah.
cut off almost, you know. I was like, oh man, this is kind of crazy. But then, you know, I started putting that together and then kind of had, you know, I just started doing like a montage piece with
Yeah.
some of the footage. And then watching it as a series, you're like, oh, it kind of gives you a certain feeling, you know, like maybe she feels small, maybe she feels pressured, she feels kind of like, you know, unseen, or she's trying to hide, like she a lot of her body movements trying to hide all the time, you know.
Hmm.
So it's kind of quite abstract. And then as we started filming, you know, like some of these takes would just let the action happen. And quite often, Goran, you know, he might give direction to the actors, he might give direction to me. It was like, Matt, like put it on, you know, like, you know, lots of headroom, or
Yeah.
like sliver was one term where I, you know, if he said that, I'll just like push him on the edge of the frame.
Yeah.
And then once again, it's like, of course, I'm following the actors and their performance, but I'm also placing the camera in a way that works for the lighting.
Hmm.
And once you, like you mentioned, composing it in a way which just try to capture what they're feeling. And a lot of it is kind of like instinctual, because it, you know, it's just everything's happening so quickly that you just kind of like reacting and responding
Yeah.
to what the actors are doing. So a lot of the time I'm thinking about what they're feeling and trying to capture that. Instead of, you know, like I said, Goran will be directing the actors, and you know, sometimes he'll direct me and sometimes you like push in, or, you know, so it's all kind of quite fluid. And yeah, no, I'm glad you have that sense of feeling. It was once again, you see the images cut together, you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
I
let's give you
mean,
a feeling.
it's such a solid marriage between cinematography and score. Mark Bradshaw's score is phenomenal,
Yeah, yeah.
paired with these visuals and with performances from, was it, I think four people that, or I think five people that somehow convey one
Hmm.
person at the same
Hmm.
time. It's a really, I mean, Sarah really had to capture this sense of like feral innocence,
Yeah.
and then that just gets like, you know, added on through each performance from everyone else, from Numi to
Hmm.
all the way to Elgar, and it's just, I don't think I've ever seen such a solid marriage between these four components of filmmaking to create something like this, because that's what always interested me about cinematography, is the challenge of conveying a story through just what you see. And I think
Hmm.
that sometimes that either maybe doesn't hit the mark, or sometimes it's spot on, but this isn't a case where, like I said, there are these handicaps, and yet it's somehow it conveys more of a thematic narrative than even in a film where a character can talk and express themselves as they do. And in a time like, even in a time like this takes place in 19th century Macedonia, and
Hmm.
somehow the story is as natural as ever, I think.
Oh, thank you, man. You know, that's something that, like I said, like we just started going on this route, and then the script kind of allowed it for us to be able to do that. You know, a lot of, you know, like our last film, like Goran and I and Bethany and Christina, we just did a second film in Melbourne at a coming of age gay love story
All right.
set in like almost 2000, I think, 1999. So that's a very different film. It's very
Hmm.
scripted, mostly just like a lot of just two people in a car, really.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more dialogue in that. There's like there's no voiceover at all, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that, you know, it was interesting going from You and Be Alone to moving to that, because that is a bit more structured. You know, you do need to be aware of eye lines more and coverage of the two people, and the, you know. Whereas in You Won't Be Alone, there's maybe like 4 or 5 scenes where there's two people talking, well, one
Yeah.
person talking, one person listening, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's mostly when Maria is there. But
Oh yeah.
apart from that, like a lot of the scenes is just like, yeah, it's following a very, very subjective point of view, you know. So it does allow us to be able to shoot in a way that's kind of like quite abstract and quite internalized.
And
And
that sets up such an interesting dynamic for Old Maid Maria to be the one who is
Mhm.
whose dialogue is the one that I think that throughout the film, I think my first experience watching the film, it took me, I think, until a couple lines of Old Maid Maria's narration to realize, oh, this is her narration now,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
dialogue is so soft and it's so beautiful, and you kind of just get
Mhm.
lost and you move with it like a river, and then you realize, oh, she's now
Mhm.
observing Navina as she's experiencing all like
Yeah.
playing with a rabbit and not
Yeah.
realizing that she needs blood to survive now.
Yeah.
um and that sets up such an interesting dynamic because you have these two characters that are quite literally on opposite sides of the spectrum of life,
Mhm.
basically. And
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, no, that's just very interesting to me. I think you guys really captured. I walked out of this feeling like curiosity because I saw it a second time the other day, and I walked out in the theater I went to see it at is right next to the One World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. And I'm
Yeah,
walking
right.
around these giant skyscrapers and I'm listening to Mark Bradshaw's score, and I'm looking around, I'm like, there's something about, when you live in a gray skyscraper area, you kind of start to not pay attention as much to your surroundings unless it's like a necessity. You're crossing the
Yeah.
street, you don't want to get hit by a car. But when you're walking on the sidewalk and you're looking up, and I'm finding myself, looking at like the way that the sun is reflecting off all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
windows, and coming and seeing the building in the skyline, and the way it protrudes up, it suddenly everything became more beautiful. And it wasn't as if, it wasn't beautiful before, but I had that curiosity of
Nice.
like just coming out of the cave and only having those two circles all the way above to see the sky, and now you're in this whole world, and that's very much like the experience of leaving a movie theater and then going back outside after
Yeah. Yeah.
experiencing a
Yeah.
movie. So yeah,
Yeah.
I connected. And it's funny. I think that it's always silly when people say that they can't connect to something unless like it's exactly them being represented. And I am
Mhm.
neither a woman or a witch or anything, and yet
Mhm.
somehow I could not stop identifying with her life experiences of just this innocent
Amazing.
curiosity.
Amazing. I'm glad you've had that response, and it's obviously been pretty interesting to hear. Yeah, obviously the response from a lot of audiences, and like most people like yourself are just kind of like entranced by it, and I think a lot of people, yeah, quite. It's always interesting to hear when they say, "Yeah, I didn't quite know how I felt, but I know I felt something," and then
Hmm.
it's kind of stayed with me, and I can't get it out of my mind, which is kind of like a really great, for
Yeah.
us, it's like a really great response to hear. And I've heard people walk out. I've heard some people who've been in the audience like, "Oh, yeah, we had a few walkouts," which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting too. Like
Yeah.
I'm not too offended by it. I think it's a good thing. But
I think that there's always that sign of, if you make someone feel something that strongly,
Hmm.
whether it be like euphoric curiosity or
Mhm, mhm.
um I mean, I that's my favorite, the opening shot. I'm going to put a spoiler warning before everything because I just have to
Yeah.
get into spoilers with you. That
Sure.
opening shot of the cat,
Oh
um
yeah.
and it's just gnawing at the grass, and then you see it feels like it's being watched, and it tries to get away, and then just the sound
Yeah.
of such like visceral raw butchering, and then you see a nice cat walk off, and it leads into the cat point of view running across the grass.
Mhm,
I think that's
mhm,
such a unique pairing of sound design and
mhm.
what's on screen. um when it came to the cat POV, what was your thought around that?
I remember, yeah, like I said, like reading that, I was like, how do we shoot a cat POV? And like, and then like I said, like speak with Goran. Like when I read the script, I never really saw it as a horror film.
Hmm.
Obviously it has a lot of horror,
Yeah.
uh, more genre elements, but yeah, speak with Goran. It's like, oh yeah, he's used, um, what was clever is that he's used certain characteristics of a genre film to be able to explore once again like the shape shifting idea with this person
Yeah.
can physically inhabit people and animals.
Hmm.
So for us, like all the darker elements of that just seems quite primal. We never really wanted to show an animal or a baby or anyone
Yeah. Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
kind of killed. Like we never really focused on that or to build any dramatic elements to it, you know, like it's just like, oh, this is kind of like the way of life of a witch, and you do happen to have just 8 animals, and you know, like
it's
it's just
almost
a
like,
Bible thing to just like, oh, it's just matter of fact. So we never really tried to focus too much on that,
it's
you
almost
know,
like a
even though a lot of
national,
people find it, yeah, pretty like gory, and you know,
yeah.
people still cringe, and but we never really like, it wasn't our focus. And
Oh
to be
yeah.
honest, it's maybe a bit more of a surprise that a lot of people are.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's almost like a National Geographic like
Yeah,
documentary
yeah,
on a witch, if it was a species on planet Earth.
yeah.
And I think that I had to shield my eyes the second time when Old Maid Maria cuts the back of baby Navina's throat. The first
Yeah,
time I saw it, instantly like my face scrunched and you
yeah,
can
yeah,
feel it. And then I've
yeah,
never heard baby gargling, and for some
yeah,
reason that sound just got me. I was like, oh
yeah.
no, it strikes you. And I think that um that pairing of there has, I don't think there has been in a while, that kind of pairing between sound design
Mm-hmm,
and visuals that really make you feel, whether it's like I
mm-hmm,
said, that euphoric curiosity, which the film is abundant with, and even in some moments like grotesque,
mm-hmm,
retching. You feel like, and that's I love that line, that where she's kind of going into more and more like how she's establishing life outside. And
mm-hmm,
she says life is a burning, biting thing, and yet, and I
mm-hmm,
love that line because
mm-hmm.
it just encapsulates the experience. There's
Yeah,
awful things, and she experiences so many awful things,
yeah.
um, going into these other people, and then there are beautiful moments of it. And I think that it's somehow, yeah, it just captures that very unique life experience in such a strange and positive way, almost, because
Mm-hmm,
by the end of the film we see what she's willing to do, and and
mm-hmm.
how easy it is for her. And oh yeah, no, when you finished the script, what was your, if you could, like, summarize your immediate thoughts? Because I think that walking out of the theater, my immediate thought was like, this was a like matriarchal kind of um tale of like, ultimately, like, of mother and child.
Mm-hmm. 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 No, of course. And then, you know, obviously, you know, I mean, they were asking us behind it's like data behind the scenes crew of filming. They're like, oh, what does this film mean to you? You know, like they break it down in like a few words. And, you know, most of the answers were like belonging
Yeah.
and to be loved, and, you know, to belong. And so, I mean, obviously all those elements are definitely in it. And obviously the title represents that as well.
Hmm. Oh yeah, which is
Um,
such an interesting concept. Yeah, I've never heard of that. I'm a big folklore and
mhm,
mythology fan. I think that some of my favorite cinematic moments are a tangible, physical visualization
mhm,
of fantasy and stuff like that. So when you see um, like the shape shifting moments, or when you see
mhm.
the I never even thought of that concept of the middle
Yeah,
claw,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
it's very almost like an eagle where you have that other one. So if you need to grab something,
yeah.
and um, just such a unique and interesting visualization of mythology, which I think that when you bring that to screen, it can either be terrifying or awe-inspiring. I think
Mhm,
another film of mine that I recently watched, I don't know how I didn't see it when it came out, The Ritual. They bring this like godlike demon, I think it's the son of Loki, and it's Nordic mythology, and it's so grotesquely horrifying that it's almost awe-inspiring to bring something
yeah,
so
wow.
fantasizing, like, to visualize it physically. So I think to do a version of a witch that is, it's not, like the Halloween witch with the hat and the
Mhm,
broom and all that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
very human, and it's very, you can be mistaken. Like if she were able to talk, I think that
Mhm,
after a while they wouldn't have any issues. Or like when they're dancing around Boris and
mhm,
they're saying, oh, he must have fornicated with the wolf eateress. I was like, oh, that's such an interesting concept, that there isn't, like, they don't know everything about them. It's really it's a species that they can tell stories about around a fire,
yeah,
but they
yeah,
don't
that's
know.
right.
It's so interesting to me to think that there's so much more to learn, and yet they're all, living their lives like they have to chop the firewood by the end of the day, or they have to
Yeah.
throw the brush out, which is so interesting.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like, yeah, I remember just like Goran just saying, it's like, oh, yeah, I kind of just wanted to make a film about peasant life in
Yeah,
Macedonia.
yeah.
And, and then obviously he's got his images. To be honest, like it took, I don't know if all of us really quite understood all the elements. It's like a few discovery processes go, oh, okay, that's what it looks like. Or, like
Mhm.
we weren't always quite sure. And then because the script is obviously so dense because so much stuff happens, it's just like trying to get your head around it. And then, like I said, we did a lot of prep, but then I was like being open to what was happening and at that particular moment and just responding, I think actually worked well with whatever Nevin is going through because that's the first time or, that's what Nevin is going through. So yeah, just to be kind of open with that and respond to that. And
I'm
yeah, I think
already
it.
dying for I'm already dying for when the screenplay is available. Just because I
Oh
mean
yeah.
I love collecting. I'm actually using 3 or 4 screenplays to prop up my computer right now, and
Oh, nice,
there's just
nice.
something so interesting, especially a film like this where everything is so uh, visual and auditory heavy. So I would love to see.
Yeah, yeah.
I would love to read the behind the scenes of that almost, and get the opportunity to put your visuals to these words
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
story. You know.
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of interesting. Yeah, once you've seen the film and you do look back, I actually haven't looked back at the script in a long time,
Hmm.
but that would be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because obviously when we're filming, we're not filming with the voiceover. That was obviously
Yeah. Exactly. Of
that was
course.
recorded earlier on, so I had an idea of what it would sound like. But to be honest, yeah, it's like we're just responding to body language and like
Yeah.
I didn't understand what everyone was saying, but it kind of it didn't really matter.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it is kind of interesting, and I remember seeing the film for the first time in like a rough edit. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a rough edit. It was pretty close to what you saw,
Hmm.
the finished film. Um, but there was no sound design yet, so I could hear the voices, and then a lot of people have mentioned like the sound of the voiceover is very particular. Like it's almost like someone really super close to the mic.
Yeah.
It's not recorded in like a clean, standard kind of way. Like it's like a little bit, maybe like a little bit louder, or like I remember listening, go, oh shit, that's kind of interesting, and then understanding, oh, it's like it adds to that internalized voice as opposed to what they're
If
used to hearing, like a
it
clean
feels
recording. Like
exactly, it feels much more like internal thoughts rather than narration. I
yeah,
think that
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
very clear difference between, like, the record scratch and yep, that's me. You want to know how I got into this
that's right,
situation versus the way that
exactly.
she pieces together
You're
these
right.
thoughts
Yeah.
of her surroundings. And it's just so it's so distinct. And I don't think that I think it's very special. And I really it's going to be like this is already easily I mean, we're only in April, but it's one of my favorite films of this year so far.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you.
I'm very much looking forward to another rewatch actually. And I
Oh,
actually
no.
wanted to talk. I have a couple favorite frames of the
Mhm.
film, and I want to get into them. But I was also wondering if you have a favorite or a couple favorite shots of yours or scenes, or is this too much like asking a parent about their favorite child? Is that possible?
I mean, that's true. Like yeah, watching the film, obviously every time you this another moment or something kind of, the first time you watch, you're like, oh, thank God, everything kind of is it's working.
Yeah.
Because I was worried, is the camera too shaky or is it too, you know, but I kind of knew I had a lot of trust and faith in Goran and
Hmm.
Christina, that they'll edit it in a way that would work. And it's actually quite experimental with the edit as well, which I'm really glad. He cuts back to certain moments and it's more, once again, it's all based on feeling.
Hmm.
Um, I guess my first initial one, the sequence that I loved was the first time I saw it, and I was like, oh, this is actually, yeah, I'm very like proud of this. Is this sequence of the teenage girl,
Hmm.
sorry, the young girl,
Hmm.
when Boris becomes the young girl, like that whole sequence,
Oh,
that transition from Boris finding the girl and then becoming the girl, and then her going through her teenage years.
and not
I was
knowing
like,
that that's what her childhood could have been.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I was like, oh wow, this is like, Yeah, this
Such a
is really incredible. Yeah.
it's so biting and beautiful, because there is that bittersweetness of, oh, this is what I missed out on. But then there's
Hmm.
that beautiful aspect of, and now I
Yeah.
get to experience it.
Yeah.
And there is something almost ceremonial to me about the idea of, when Navina is as Boris, and she's watching this little girl on the ground,
Hmm.
and she's shedding tears, and she's kind of, this is her first experience of like death in human
Hmm.
life, and the
Hmm.
fact that it strikes her so hard after
Hmm.
living as Boris for so long, I think is like that immediate human connection of, yeah, there is more, there is
Hmm.
more to than just wandering and experiencing other bodies, you know what I mean? There's,
Hmm.
which is even, I love that line that Old Man Maria has of, you think you're the first to do this, which adds a
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
history of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
must have been happening all the time, and failing miserably. And then we have this excellent story where it works out in its own way. Um,
Hmm.
my
Yeah.
favorite, yeah, you go.
Yeah. And then like just recently, the last time I saw it, the one shot or the one edit point that I'm like, oh man, like this is actually really great, was during the wedding scene where she's dancing in the wedding,
Yeah.
and then she looks up and like just the trees, and then it cuts to Maria just standing by herself
Yes, that's my
with super
second one.
wide, yeah, super wide, super like a lot of headroom, and then just that edit point.
It's
And then
so,
because like you said, like she's like, oh, why is it so easy for you? And it's like kind of like
yeah.
quite heartbreaking,
Oh yeah.
you
I,
know?
I I have it physically written down. I
Oh,
was like,
amazing.
that's my second favorite shot in that, because it's so isolating and it's so longing.
Hmm.
There's this sense of like, because there's always in the back of my mind the entire time watching the film, because she shows up every once in a while to kind of like be
Hmm.
like so bitingly mean, because she's
Yeah.
so envious. You
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
she's watching all the time,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is which adds a whole other layer of misery. And then,
Yeah. Totally.
and because we saw her past, and we saw what happened to her when she was
Yeah.
a human, it's just, oh, it's so heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the composition of the shot is just every, technique of what makes this film so beautiful. Is she's surrounded by this lush green,
Hmm.
scenery, and she's in the right here basically of this shot. and
Yeah. Yeah.
um and it's just so beautiful in so many like heartbreaking ways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember saying that. I was like, oh wow, like
Oh,
yeah, Goran really like
and the
hit that
ceremony
mark.
of the wedding is so like joyful, and you feel,
Mm.
this
Hmm.
this sense of like, oh, she's found a place. She feels
Hmm.
like, she can live here, she can build a life here. She found someone that she loves. I love that narration point of, um every version of me loves every version of him, and there's only one him, and there's been five her.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
a, there's like,
Yeah.
you can like feel like she feels love for something else that she's
Yeah.
never, that she's, I mean, something literally from, being in this dungeon to all the way experiencing so many different facets of life to true
Hmm.
love. It's so beautiful. And then that cut right to Ome Maria is so just, like, you sit there and you kind of, I deflated in my seat a couple of times, just being like, oh man, what a disappointment, in that, like, oh, in another life, it wouldn't have been so hard. And I think that rings true to just how the elderly feel with the youthful. I think that there's this
Hmm.
idea that,
Hmm. Hmm.
people who have been alive for the last 70 years look at people who are 20 now and go like, ah, it's
Mm.
so easy, it's so easy for you. How is it so easy for you? And
That's
it's
a
not like
really
it's not
good
like
word.
it's
Word.
actively done against them. Yeah, it's not like it's like
Yeah.
it's purposely done to spite them, right? It's just the way that life moves forward, and it's
Hmm.
so authentic.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's really quite spot on. Yeah.
And my other favorite shot,
Hmm.
is, there's a shot of Boris, and it's he's sitting down, and then you see the clouds below him,
Oh, yep. Yep.
and they
Yep.
just
Yep.
go on for forever until the next
Yeah.
mountain.
Yeah.
And oh my god, that shot, I would, if I could, I would print it and like put it on my wall. It's just
Oh,
so,
yeah.
evokes so much like opportunity and freedom and emotion in it. And it
Mhm.
makes me think of, I can't remember who painted it. I should have wrote it down. The traveler or the wanderer of the man standing on the edge of a cliff, and it's
Yeah,
just
right.
clouds for miles and miles, and it's just, it evokes so much opportunity, I think, to me.
It's kind of, yeah, it's interesting you say that because that particular location, there's actually a man-made river below the clouds. So every time we've scouted before, every time we've seen that, there's like water down there. It's like
Wow.
a massive, like, kind of like, yeah, I guess you call it a river. But on that particular day, just like that particular day, it was like full sun, but there was these clouds just covering
Oh,
that whole. So
so
it's just like,
beautiful.
oh wow, we're like, oh, it would have been great with the water, but then this has another element to it that was kind of like, well, like you said, it gives you a certain kind of feeling, and it is pretty interesting. Someone randomly on Instagram and Twitter did a poster of that, so
I've got to
I'm
get a
gonna send
hold
it
of
to
it.
you. Yeah, yeah, he just designed a poster of it. I was like, oh wow,
Absolutely.
like
I
all of
mean,
us, like Goran sent it to me. I was like, oh, that's an amazing poster.
yeah, no, that's incredible. And I think that that's a film like this can garner so much unique art
Mm,
to inspire,
hmm
um,
hmm
because it's so. I've been using this term a lot lately, original, but I think this is even its own. This even branches off from the term of original filmmaking in such a unique way.
Yeah, I mean, no, thank you, man. Like, it's just like, on the surface, I guess when we're scouting, like we were shooting it in winter, so I was thinking I would shoot it with a lot of cloud cover, so it might be all soft and But then for some, it's just when we started shooting, it was freezing cold, but then all of a sudden it'll be like blue skies and a lot of sun.
Yeah,
And shooting in like full sun is like actually quite hard, depending on, like no one really shoots in the middle of the day kind of thing.
yeah,
But it has a certain feel and it has a certain look to it. Like that scene, like that shot, like you said, him sitting up there, like it's full sun hitting him.
hmm,
We've obviously scouted with the direction of the sun. So we've kind of planned certain times a day to be in certain locations. But even then, like full sun is full sun. So it just added another element to it, which, we had to embrace. And like I said, that's what I was doing. Like while I was following them, the cameras, like light, like choosing the lighting as I'm kind of moving with them and pointing the camera to a certain direction in relation to where the actors are with the sun.
hmm.
But it has a certain feeling. Like it doesn't feel, once again, it doesn't feel like a horror film because we're not really
Oh
going,
no, it's like
like,
it's a coming
yeah,
of
we never
age.
had that. Yeah, we never really relied or wanted to make it look gloomy or,
Hmm.
everything just needed to feel natural. Like there's no, obviously everything inside is firelight, just
I
trying
was
to
just about to
find the right
say, it all
angle of the
feels
firelight for all that. And
it all feels
nighttime.
very naturalistic. Yeah,
Yeah, so we always like, we didn't want to have like a haze machine or anything to have shafts of light to be too like dramatic or too designed. We wanted to feel kind of, and then obviously embrace whatever the sun or the clouds or, it's like, the shots where she's walking and it's like completely fogged out. Like that was just that morning. And
oh
then,
yeah, oh my
like
god,
we're setting up for one scene and then Goran went to take a pee in the bushes. And then he was like, Matt, come with me. And we looked at it. I was like, oh, this is starting. Like, we just have to
yeah,
shoot here. So we just like, he was like, all right, let's get this and this and this. And then we'll just follow her with the, we'd maybe do that scene here, we kind of knew we were doing it there, but it's just responding to whatever was there on the day,
yeah,
whatever was given us. And then, once again, like to the crew, we're so used to us being so spontaneous at that point. We're like, all right, we're changing the plan. We're going to do this. Everyone run or we're going to lose it. Everyone's like,
yeah,
okay, cool. Like, what do we need? As opposed to just like, oh, this wasn't planned. And, they're just like, okay, like, let's just go with this certain, what is presented to us and embrace it. And the actors were obviously down. So that's why
yeah,
we have these moments of like really utilizing what's happening.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that just adds so much. I think if I were to come up with like maybe a couple shots that truly, if I saw them alone,
Mm-hmm.
struck like fear in me, is that shot of old maid Marie walking through the smoke when Boris is putting all
Mm-hmm.
the brush
Mm-hmm.
fire down,
Yep.
and she's kind of like goading him on, and
Yep.
that initial shot before you actually get a straight look at her, it's very wavy, and the smoke is in the way, and you just see
Yep.
a figure that is so you know mutilated, and the
Yep.
wispy hair, and that shot alone, um truly, like, oh, like it sends a shiver down your spine for a second.
Once again, like when we were scouting, we saw farmers doing that for real,
Yeah.
burning,
Wow.
so we drove by, and we saw it happening for real. We're like, oh, that's great. And then at the time, I was like, oh, that's incredible light,
Hmm.
because they were doing it like dusk,
Yeah.
so it looked quite dramatic. But then when we filmed it on our day, once again, it's full sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's full sun with so much smoke, and
And
then
it
light
hits the
just,
smoke so differently.
so it's just like, I was like, oh man, it's so bright. Like it wasn't like what we saw before.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, but then like you said, like we just embrace it. And as you start feeling it, you once again, you're like, oh, wait a minute.
It's something new.
It's something new. Like I've never quite seen it done this way before. It's just embracing what it was. And it was like, oh, it's like super stark now. It's like quite, it has a certain feeling that like it's just, yeah, you can't put your point on it. But like you said, it just gives you a certain feeling. And then all of a sudden with her in that environment just changes it completely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that wasn't planned for it to look like that, but we had just had to, like, and then because it's super independent film, like we can't
Yeah.
really, it's a big setup to have all those extras and the
Oh
set,
yeah.
all the
Probably. Yeah, of
smoke and
course.
everything, and so it's not like we can go, oh, let's come back.
Yeah. No. But in
you know.
that execution, you come up with something that is completely unique. And I think that
Mhm.
if there's always that opportunity, of course, I mean, in bigger budget projects where you get to, you get a couple chances at working at something and you get to pick parts of each of them and
Mhm.
you make the perfect one.
Yeah.
But then I think that there's such a unique aspect, or there's such a free opportunistic aspect to being like,
Mhm.
okay, we got a version of it and it's our version, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's officially that version.
Yeah. 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 Because like I said, like you just feel this certain way. And
Yeah.
like I said, if we tried to have too much of a heavy hand in pushing it one way or the other,
Hmm.
I think it will start feeling a bit false.
Oh, of course. And there's always that danger. I think it's like dancing on like a blade where you
Mm.
if you perfectly get it, there's a feeling of that something just feels right, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
settled. And if you and there's
Mm-hmm.
always, I think more often now, because of just how much is out there, the oversaturation of work, there's this,
Mm-hmm.
you get to see versions where something like this maybe didn't exactly land it, and you can tell.
Yeah. 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 No, you are right. And we're obviously aware of that. And like I said, like from early discussions, just like how do we make this believable? How do we make this believable? So
Yeah.
and then there were times where we tried to do something, we're like, nah, I think we're just trying to be too clever here, or it's a bit
Hmm.
too um yeah, just a bit too we just weren't feeling it. So it was
Yeah.
great for all of us to go, yeah, you know.
Yeah, a sequence that I felt in my seat was the first transition from
Yep.
into Numi's performance, which
Yep.
is, you get to see that childlike curiosity through
Mm-hmm.
just an older woman that is settled in her life. She has a husband, she has a
Yeah.
kid,
Yeah.
and I think that is such an interesting next, like, level to the film. But that initial transition is so, I mean, I wrote down tangible at least 100 times in this. Like, you can see, like, when
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
close up uh of her back muscles contorting
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so physical, and the sound design
Yeah.
around that, and you get
Yeah.
to, you almost experience like a sense of like all your muscles contract at the same time and then let
Mm-hmm.
go and then contract again. Um, when it came to filming that sequence, what were your thoughts around that?
So that was actually Numi's first. That whole scene was her first scene, her first day, her first morning. Like
Wow.
her first shot of the film was her dying.
Wow.
Yeah, and
What a,
then
wow.
she came in. I'm just trying to remember if it was halfway through filming or maybe like three-quarters of the way through filming.
Yeah.
Because she came and she stayed with us for like 5 days.
Yeah.
So we've already started shooting some stuff, and um, then Goran would show her a little bit of what Sarah was doing, a little bit what
Hmm.
Carlotta was doing. I'm pretty sure she came after Carlotta. Um, so you know, so she can kind of grasp it. But then at the same time, it's the first transition of the film, really.
Yeah.
So we might have done variations of that before, but I guess that was the first time. Yeah, now thinking back, yeah, I mean that's obviously the first time in the film,
Yeah.
and I guess there were questions about this whole chest thing and how does like when they pull it out, like how does it transition? But it worked in the sense that like they were kind of in the same position when Numi got up, and then
Mhm.
obviously following whatever her body
Yeah,
was
the
doing.
the
And she's
mat the match
obviously
there is so well
and
done.
it just worked that like we just started doing it, and just this head turn, this subtle head turn, all of a sudden you're like, oh, is that a different person?
Mhm.
And then so I think they really worked amazingly well when they started piecing it together. But it was kind of like something that the more simpler it was,
Mhm.
kind of way, and really was is like following their performance.
Yeah.
When she starts doing this thing with the back, you're like, oh, I've got to come around a little bit, and then you're like, oh wow, that's really, and then you're like, oh, I think she's gonna turn her head, and then you slowly move up, and then
Yeah. It's a
and
very
then
informative sequence
yeah,
because
and go on.
well, as a viewer, you kind of, we get these hidden versions of the transformation, and we get these far
Yeah,
away versions of the
yeah,
transformation. But this
yeah,
is the
yeah,
one.
yeah,
This is the most informative one, where we see her open up her chest and put
yeah,
pieces of this person inside her, and then it,
yeah.
you see the physical feeling of what I mean. That alone, like the fact that Sarah was able to convey this physical feeling of like putting
Mhm.
bits of someone else in you that
Yeah,
viscerally, and then the
yeah,
back shot, and then it spins around and it's a whole other person. That's such
yeah,
a, I mean, yeah, just informative in like this happened. They said they have to do that every time,
yeah, yeah. And like you said, the sound design is very, very detailed. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
obviously when we were filming it, they just had like it was like a prosthetic piece with like a bag, so she just put it in the bag. But then to reset that, it was like we didn't have a lot of takes to it.
Mhm.
But I remember all of us seeing that for the first time and seeing the CG chest. I was like, oh wow, this is working
Yeah.
incredibly well, because we're like, does she transition? Like, does she morph like the wolf?
Mhm.
Like is that how but yeah, Goran just, I think, when we're shooting it, we have, oh, maybe that could cut there, maybe that could, but it worked out a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's all based on their performance. If their
Yeah.
performance was bad, and once again, like it could not feel as seamless as it is.
And in the back of my mind, every other transition afterwards, I had that entire sequence in my head when
Yeah,
it
because
when
they do
she,
the similar movements with the arms, and they do the
yeah, I
similar
mean,
movements with
she lures off Boris, which what I also love, just side note, she lures off Boris the same way she gets lured off during
yeah,
the sex scene, which is such a great, I mean, she's washing her face the same way he was when she first saw him.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I just thought that
yeah.
was really interesting. But then after his, all you see is you see her kill him, and
Mm-hmm,
then it cuts to him in the water, feel like she's feeling out this new body, and there's that such unique sense of like, this is that same person with the same
mm-hmm,
curiosity in the
mm-hmm.
body of this grown man. And then even the same with turning into the little girl. You don't have to show it, but in the back of my mind, I know
Yeah,
what's happening.
yeah, yeah,
It's always
yeah.
there.
And then, there are times where Goran's like, "Hey, should we shoot this in slow motion?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay," And then
Mhm.
seeing the edit now, you're like, "Oh, wow, that just like it just amplifies all those transitions, and like, it could be just a simple cut of her from behind
Oh
walking."
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we were quite, yeah,
Yeah, no, this was I keep telling people to see this movie because it's still in theaters, and some other films have been in theaters for the last 5 months, and it's so
hmm,
disappointing to see them, like, I mean, I don't know, it's weird to say disappointing, but like to see a movie like this. I was luckily not alone. There have been several times throughout this year that I've been alone in a movie theater seeing a movie that's not
yeah, right,
Spider-Man or something, which is like, you don't
yeah,
want to, I don't want
yeah.
to, it's just people. The way I've been describing it is you're depriving yourself of such a beautiful experience if you don't see this
Yeah.
movie. So
Yeah, no, I think yeah, I think what's been great is a lot of people fighting it themselves, and I think that's a good
yeah,
feeling
yeah,
to
which
like, yeah, some of the
yeah,
critics are even the same thing during Sundance. They're like, I wasn't really planning on watching this film, but since I can just watch it from home or whatever, You
I
know,
I
they
had
got
only
stumbled on it and they're like, oh, well, I wasn't expecting this film.
I had only heard about the film because I think at the beginning of this year I had been exploring different theaters in the city because
Mhm.
I've gotten so tired of seeing movies at an AMC or a Regal.
Yeah, yeah.
So I go, the main theater I go to is the Alamo Draft House, and they
Nice.
show all types of movies, whether it's
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
30 years ago now and all that. And but I went to the Angelica on Houston Street
Oh,
in New
nice.
York,
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that's a
and
great.
I had seen The Worst Person in the World, and the trailer that played before that
Love
was
that film.
this one,
Really?
which was like,
Wow.
and I was at a Q&A with Trier and
Yeah, yeah.
Renata Reinsva during The Worst Person in the World, and I was like, oh man, like one, I have to see that movie of
Yeah.
like the screaming of the mom, because I mean in the trailer it's like, oh, the wolf eaters took her daughter, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, that is a performance I can't miss out on.
Yeah.
um and then ending the trailer with that shot of Olme Maria just standing in the
Mm-hmm.
in the far of that wide shot, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I need to see that one. I've been seeing a lot more international films lately, and I think that is just a whole other world of cinema.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then to go into The Worst Person in the World and be like, okay, I have a list. I have to see this one more time because I love that movie as well.
That's
Um,
an incredible film.
yeah, and then I have to. I marked it down. I was like, when this comes out, I will be there for it for sure.
Nice, nice. I appreciate you watching it again.
Yeah. Well, I
And
want
yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully, people watching theaters. I get it. Like it's
Yeah.
quite obscure. A lot of people don't know quite what to make of it, which is a great thing, I think, because yeah, people can kind of find it and
Yeah.
discover it. Yeah.
I want to thank you 1,000 times for doing this. I truly
Uh,
appreciate it because I
Thank you
just.
very much for your support. I really appreciate you
Oh
taking the
well,
time
you know.
and yeah, just wanted to know more about the film. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, I've gotten my page has given me the opportunity to talk to, like, I spoke to Daniel Hart, who the composer for The Green Knight, and I just,
Nice.
talking to people to hear these insights is so fascinating to me. So, because I'm using the moniker of amateur filmmaker, even though I just have several unfinished screenplays in my docs.
I mean, it's kind of interesting because like Goran, he wrote this quite a few years ago
Mhm.
as more of like I wouldn't say it's a writing exercise for himself, kind of. He was just like, oh, what if there was like a genre premise, and then he just started writing, and then
Mhm.
he was super inspired by Virginia Woolf. Apparently, he was like, oh, what if I would try and make a film in that kind of style? So he just kind of wrote the script without ever
Yeah.
thinking anyone would make it because it's such a
Mhm.
crazy script. Like, it's not hindered on,
Yeah.
oh, how does this film get made? Like he just started writing it. And then, Goran made a short. He's made a lot of shorts,
Yeah.
but he made a short in Macedonia that was selected in the Sundance and won. And, um, through that, he met Christina, who got in touch, was like, hey, what do you have? And then, he must have sent her like 8 scripts or something. I can't remember, maybe more, that he's just kind of written, it's just like,
Yeah.
and then this was the one that she first responded to. And she's like, what is this film? Like, I have to make it, And he was like, this is the one you want to make, Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty
Well,
fascinating.
yeah. Well, I hope to talk with you again when this next
Yeah.
project of yours
Let me
is
know. Hit me
coming out.
up.
That would be a real privilege. And I want to thank you again for doing this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, you can follow the podcast at on my YouTube channel, Comedian of Cinema, or you can go to where you listen to podcasts, wherever, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever. How's it going to end? And I'll see you next time.